All right, this is the second video for our radical review, and this will go over how to do problems, let me see, problem numbers 41 through, I believe, 80. Let me look real quick. Yes, 41 through 80. So this is the video you'll reference as you do these problems. So when you have two radicals that are multiplied by each other, there's a couple different ways you can do this. And I'm going to show you both ways, and then I'm going to let you decide what works best for you. Okay, so this first way is, this is number 51 on your sheet, by the way. The first way you could do this is you could just combine these to where it's the square root of 10 times 8, which is the same thing as the square root of 80. Okay, now we're back to where we've already done this. Okay, so after you get the square root of 80, you want to break 80 down into its prime factorization. So 2 goes into 80 40 times, 2 goes into 40 20 times, 2 goes into 20 10 times, 2 goes into 10 5 times, 5 goes into 5 once. When we get to 1, we're done. Okay, now I want to go through, pull out our pairs. So we have a pair of 2's and a pair of 2's and a leftover 5. So the pairs come out front, so we have 2 pairs of 2's, and remember we multiply them, and our leftover 5 goes in the fridge. So the square root of 80 is just 4 square root of 5, and that would be our final answer. Okay, so square root of 10 times square root of 8 simplified is just 4 square root of 5. All right, so the way I just showed you is the way I prefer to do it, and that's not to say you have to prefer it that way too. So I'm going to show you another way you can do this, okay? And then you can pick what works best for you. So I'm going to leave this as square root of 10 times the square root of 8, okay? And I'm going to kind of treat these separately. So the square root of 10, 2 goes into 10 5 times, 5 goes into 5 once, 1, you're done. So it doesn't simplify, it just says square root of 10. Okay, the square root of 8 does simplify though. So let's break it down. 2 goes into 8 4 times, 2 goes into 4 twice, 2 goes into 2 once, 1, you're done. Okay, so we have a pair of 2's and then a leftover 2, so this is 2 square root of 2. Okay, so square root of 10 doesn't break down. Square root of 8 breaks down to 2 square root of 2. So when I say square root of 10 times square root of 8, it's the same thing as saying square root of 10 times 2 square root of 2. Okay, but we're not done. Okay, we want to combine these together and simplify them. So now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply everything on the outside, which is just a 2, and multiply everything on the inside, which is the 2 and 10. So when we do that, I get my 2's still on the outside. 10 times 2 is square root of 20. Okay, now the reason I don't prefer it this way is because now, to me, it's like an extra step. Now we have to look at this square root of 20, and we have to see if it can be simplified. So if I break 20 down, 5 goes into 20 4 times, 2 goes into 4 twice, 2 goes into 2 once, 1, we're done. So square root of 20 breaks down into 2 square root of 5. Okay, so this is the same thing as saying 2 times square root of 20 is 2 square root of 5. Then once again, I multiply what's on the outside, so 2 times 2 gives me 4 square root of 5. Okay, so if I look, I get 4 square root of 5 both ways. There's just an added step to this one. You have to double check after you multiply. You choose which way you prefer. All right, I want you to go ahead and try 57 on your own. You can do it either way, and then we'll go over it. All right, so once again, I've shown it both ways. You can do it either way. Please don't do it both ways when you're doing your homework. That's way too time consuming. So on the left side, I just put it together from the beginning. 20 times 15 is 300. Broke square root of 300 down, and I got a pair of 5's, a pair of 2's, so I multiply them. 5 times 2 is 10. and a leftover 3, so our answer would be 10 square root of 3. Okay, now on this side, I broke down square root of 20, and then I broke down square root of 15 separately. Now, square root of 15 doesn't break down, square root of 20 did. Okay, so when I multiplied these together, 2 square root of 5 times square root of 15, I get 2 square root of 75. Okay, now I need to go and see if 75 breaks down, which I did right here. And as you can see, it does. Square root of 75 is equal to a pair of 5s out front, left over 3, so 5 square root of 3. So I just said 2 times square root of 75 is 5 square root of 3. When I do that, I get 10 square root of 3. Okay, so you get the same answer both ways. It's just a matter of preference. All right, let's move on to the next page, which now contains variables. Okay, so this number that I'm getting ready to do is number 63. So find number 63 on your page, and you should see square root of 128k squared. So when I do this, I'm going to separate it and look at it in smaller pieces. Okay, so this is square root of 128 times square root of k squared. Okay, and I'm going to look at these separately. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a line here. Well, I'm going to simplify square root of 128 just like I normally would. So 2 goes into that 64 times. 2 goes into that 32 times. 2 goes into that 16. 2 goes into 16 8 times. 2, 4. 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, we're done. Bunch of 2's. Okay, so I have a pair of 2's, a pair of 2's, and a pair of 2's, and a leftover 2. Remember, pairs come out front, so I get 2 times 2 times 2 out front. Leftovers go in the fridge, so square root of 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Square root of 2. Okay, so square root of 128 simplifies to 8 square root of 2. Right? Now, k squared. Let's think of k squared. K squared is just k times k. Okay, so if I want to break down k squared, I can divide out a k times, divide out another k divided by k is 1. Okay, circle my pairs. So I have pair, I have no leftovers, so square root of k squared is just k. That should make sense, guys. Anything, the square root of anything squared is just that anything. All right, so what I'm left here now is I have 8 square root of 2 in k. And remember, I'm multiplying these two here. So I'm just going to draw another line. Okay, so I'm going to say 8 square root of 2 times k. Right, now like I did before, I want to multiply everything that's on the outside of the square root, which is 8 and k. So this is just 8k. And then I want to multiply anything on the inside of the square root, which is just 2. So 8k square root of 2. That is my final answer. All right, let's look at problem 69 now. Okay, now I'm going to separate this again. I'm going to separate it into the square root of 98 times the square root of x to the 4th times the square root of y squared. Okay, and then I'm going to treat them all separately. So 98, break down square root of 98, that gives me 249, 7, 7, 7, 1. So square root of 98 is 7 square root of 2. Okay, square root of x to the 4th, I break it down. X can go into x to the 4th, x to the 3rd time. X can go into x to the 3rd, x squared time. X can go x squared x times. X can go into x once. When we get to 1, we're done. So we have a pair of x's and a pair of x's. So the pairs come out front and we multiply them, x times x. We don't have any leftovers, so we do not have a square root. So this is just x squared. And then y squared, break it down. Y goes into y squared, y times. Y goes into y once. 1, we're done. So we have a pair of y's, and this is just y. Okay, so when I put it all together, I have 7 square root of 2 times x squared times y. Now I want to take everything that's outside of the square root and multiply them. So I just get 7x squared y, and then everything on the inside of the square root, which all I have is an x, or a 2, sorry, square root of 2. So this would be my final answer. All right, guys, this is number 75 on your packet. Now, I want you to go through, this one looks long and scary, but I want you to go through, try to do it on your own, really break it into several pieces, and then we'll go over it. All right, so I've gone and I've separated them, and then I've broken down each one individually. Okay, so square root of 27 breaks down into 3 square root of 3. Square root of h to the 4th breaks down into h squared. Square root of j cubed breaks down to j square root of j. And square root of k squared breaks down into k. So when I go and I multiply each of those components, guys, what I've done is anything on the outside of a square root, I've highlighted it in yellow, and anything on the inside, I've highlighted in blue. Okay, so on the outside, it's 3 times h squared times j times k, which is what I have right here. And then on the inside, it's just 3 times j, which is 3j. So this here is my final answer. All right, let's look at one more problem. So this one's number 77. And I want you to go ahead and try to do this one on your own again, and then we'll go over it just like we did last time. All right, so what I've done is I've gone through and I've separated each of these into separate components. So I've changed it to the square root of 27 times the square root of p times the square root of q to the 4th times the square root of r. Okay, now I've broken each one of these components down individually. So square root of 27 becomes 3 square root of 3. Square root of p cannot be simplified any, so it just stays square root of p. Q to the 4th, the square root of q to the 4th can break down. It has 2 pairs of q, so q times q is just q squared. And then the square root of r cannot be broken down, so it is just the square root of r. Okay, now I've taken each one of these, 3 square root of 3, square root of p, q squared, square root of r, and I've multiplied them right here. That's what this is. Okay, now I've gone through and in yellow, I've highlighted everything on the outside of the square root. So I have a 3 and a q squared, and I'm just going to multiply them together. So 3q squared times the square root of, and then in blue, I've multiplied everything on the inside of the square root, which is just a 3, a p, and an r. So my final answer is 3q squared, square root of 3pr.